dug deep. You're Ken Kell. You're the hockey guy. I go, I don't know anything about this stuff.
This is The Conversation Line, presented by Fieger Law.
What's up, Red Wings fans? Welcome to another edition of The Conversation Line, brought to you by Fieger Law. I'm Daniella alongside the radio voice of your Red Wings, Ken Kell, and joining us today, Red Wings goaltender, Alex Lyon. Fans have been looking forward to this one, Alex.
I'm pumped too. I'm ready to go. I got all kinds of things to talk about.
What is something you want to start with? I've never done that before, given the reins to my guests. So what do you want to start with?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to lead this right off with, actually I was having a conversation with Lainey on our way up here. And we were just talking about podcasting and interesting things to listen to and talk about. And I was just saying what I'm always interested in is like, when you meet people in their adult form, it's often in their final form of humanity. You know, when you can turn 30 years old, like you're pretty much set in your personality, like what you do, unless you have a drastic life shift. But I'm always interested in to know like how that person formed, because everybody is realistically just like a product of their surroundings, nature, how their parents treated them when they were of ages 3 to 16 years old. And that's what I always find most interesting, is like, how badly did your parents punish you when you were a kid?
Did you need a lot of punishing?
I did. My parents were pretty strict, to be honest with you. And I resented them and still resent them to this day for it, but I am also extremely appreciative that, because it just has made me more disciplined. Not that I'm very disciplined, but more disciplined than I probably would have been if I would have just had free reign. But I find that stuff interesting, and to be honest with you, a lot of my goaltending and hockey persona is formed by the way my parents treated me when I was a teenager.
So are you a different goaltender now than you were maybe when you were 15 or 16 years old then? For
sure. I think when I was young, my parents put a lot of pressure on my sister and I just to succeed in general, which is great. I think it's tough at times, and you know, especially when you're in your 20s, and even now you're just like trying to adjust from that and like figure out who you are. But like for example, I think about my dad's life philosophy is always like, it's an adventure and you should treat it as an adventure. And I think a lot of times it helps me with goaltending, because it's like when times are good, let's treat it as an adventure. It's great. It's going to turn back around. It helps even more when times are bad, because it's like, okay, it's an adventure. You know, if that's it and whatever, and you can treat it as such, and it helps me ease my mind.
I mean, that kind of leads into this question. Just, you're talking about the way that you've shaped yourself as a human being kind of also shaped you as a goaltender and a hockey player. What are the biggest parts of your life that off the ice that you feel like translate on the ice?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I would say one of the biggest changing moments for me was I'm not really the type of guy that can like take their foot off the gas. I don't really separate life and hockey that well. They're kind of intertwined for me. So even when I'm away from the rink, I'm still actively being as a goalie. I've just kind of resorted to that. And I think a lot of goalies do. At some point, you just kind of understand that you have to turn your life over to hockey and goaltending. But when I was in Florida, watching Sergei Bobrovsky, and just seeing the amount of time and commitment that he put into goaltending, a literal 365-day, 24-hour-a-day job, it made me realize how much more I could do. But also at the same time affirmed what I was doing, and made me feel good that I wasn't a complete and total sociopath and narcissist, which maybe you have to be to be a really good goalie, or even really good hockey player in general, athlete. But that it's okay to be obsessed with it. And so, yeah, at times it goes overboard, and that's when you kind of have to be careful. You have to be a human as well, but yeah, I don't know. It's always a learning experience.
You know, Alex, I've been around a long time. I've talked to a lot of goaltenders, and everyone is different. And some of them have really crazy quirks, and some of them are just really cerebral. You seem like you're a pretty cerebral guy. But why is the goaltending position, or the goaltender position, there's so many characters. Why is that? Is it because you're stopping pucks at 150 miles an hour or what?
I think, honestly, the conclusion I've come to is that you have to deal with the stress. It manifests itself in whatever way it does, but it's always going to manifest itself. And however you deal with that, it's just a reality of the goaltending position. Just because I think there is, like Cam, for example, I think he was on here a couple weeks ago, but Cam, I am just so incredibly impressed with his even keel persona. I'm sure you guys see that as well. But he's just a very even, great guy, great locker room guy, obviously a fantastic goalie. So I try to learn from that and take pieces of that. But I think it's just a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And when you have a bad day, the team has a bad day. And that's just the reality of the situation. Like Paul Maurice would always say, when the goal goes in, the camera goes on the goalie and the camera goes on the head coach. And those are the first two people that get pointed to. And that's just the reality of the position. So I think dealing with that and wrapping your head around that, if you don't confront that, then you're not going to be successful. You have to take that head on.
So on the way to becoming the goaltender you are today, you played with or behind some really great goaltenders, including Sergei Bobrovsky. So how much do you try to take from each guy that you play with? You just mentioned Cam and some of the stuff that you take from him right now.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on the time you spend with them. You know, obviously when you're young, you need to kind of formulate a game plan and a roadmap as to how you want to be and where you want to go. So when you're young, you're much more of a sponge and you don't really understand your routine and things that work for you and things that don't work for you. And so like when I was in Philly, I found being around Brian Elliott was a huge help to me, and just understanding kind of the way that he was and how he operated. I tried to emulate that a lot. And that was good for me. I played with Anthony Stolarz for 2 years, who's obviously having a lot of success. We're the same age, so it was a little different. But yeah, the longer you go, the more you kind of get set in your ways. But it's also important to keep an open mind and try to learn from everybody you come around.
Alex, it seems like you have the gift of gab, and you like to talk to people. Some goalies are quiet, but you like to talk to the media people when they come in and the game day skates and everything. But how did you get your gift of gab? Was that something that was passed down from your parents or what?
That's straight from Tim Lyon. And we talked about this, I think, a little bit, Ken, but my dad, for, 30, 35 years now, has been a professional fishing guide on Lake of the Woods. And when you're in a boat for 8 hours with 6 other people, you might think that it's about catching fish, but as he always told me, you're ultimately an entertainer, and a performer to some degree. And he always just felt that, having that personal touch, remembering things about people, being a great conversationalist, those are the things that are really important in his line of work. He's also an English major at Yale, so he's he can talk his way out of a paper bag. So I got that a little bit from him. He's much more extroverted than I am, I think being a good conversationalist is a good life skill for sure.
So you were a third generation Yale student.
Fourth
generation
Yale
student. Wow. So did you feel pressure right away that that's like what you had to do, or was it something that you felt you wanted to continue?
No, not at all. I didn't feel any pressure. Honestly, it's just worked out that way. It wasn't never like we're Yale people and we are Yale men. It was never like that. And to be honest with you, being I don't know the word contradictarian. Contrarian. That's the word.
Just to say you're close.
Close enough.
We're all contrarians. So when I was being recruited, it was largely like, I don't want to go here and have people think that I went here because my parents went here, my dad went here. So Dartmouth was definitely in the mix. I think that was a serious consideration. Some other schools closer to Minnesota, St. Cloud, Duluth, I thought were awesome schools. But at the end of the day, I think it was tough for me to pass up those academics, and Yale was an extremely good hockey team at the time, so that combination is really good.
Alex, they say college is the best time of year for any man or woman going to college. What comes to mind, like what types of things did you do to have fun while going to a really prestigious school in Yale?
Yeah, Baudette is a town of, and I've litigated this my entire career, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but Baudette is a very rural town, 900 people, graduated with 35 kids, so to say the least, I was an extremely naive 18-year-old. I really didn't know what was going on in the outside world, and then I played in Omaha for 2 years, and then I went to Yale, and it just opened up an entirely new world for me in terms of seeing, like wealth in the world, seeing a diversity of interest, a diversity of people, diversity of perspectives, so for me, kind of, I was obviously raised in a place where there are no stoplights in Lake Woods County. I had never driven on a stoplight before or seen a stoplight before, and then you get transplanted into New Haven, Connecticut, and it's a literal polar opposite. So I'm very appreciative of that. I think it just kind of made me see both sides of the coin, so it just gave me a good perspective, I think, to see kind of all facets of life.
Was it at Yale that you realized you could be a professional hockey player, or when did that moment set in for you?
Yeah, I had a good 2 years in Omaha, and I felt like I could be a pretty solid college goalie. I definitely didn't think going to Yale my freshman year, I never thought that I would play professionally. And then I had a really good freshman year, and I wasn't really taking it that seriously at the time, like taking it as serious as any college player does. But after my freshman year, things really started to get serious. I started to train the right way. I started to eat the right way. I started to pay attention to other goalies and kind of just like said, all right, what happens if I be the best version of myself possible? And then after my sophomore year, I had a really good year that year. And then I went to the World Championship just as the third goalie. And that experience also changed a lot for me, just seeing how other professionals operate, kind of like I said with Bob, but seeing how seriously you can take it and how dialed in you can be. And at that point, I just knew that if I commit to this, I can make money in some capacity. Honestly, never thought that I would get to this point, but being in the AHL and you can have a pretty good life being a good AHL player as well. And so I just said, let's just see how far it takes me, and turned pro after my junior year. And like I said, it's just kind of been an adventure since. I never really put any expectations on it. Never thought, honestly, I would be a regular NHLer ever. Obviously, I'm sure you have the Hockey DP page up there, but spent a long time in the AHL and the minor leagues, and at some point resorted to be saying, all right, this is my life. And then things changed here in the last 2 or 3 years, but it's been a fun ride for sure.
All right, you played for Philadelphia, Carolina, Florida Panthers, handful of games with those teams. Then you come to Detroit, and in your first year here, I believe you played 44 games. You were the go-to guy. I mean, what was it like for you getting all that workload when you really never experienced that before?
Yeah, last year was there were some ups and downs for sure. It was interesting because I had gone through this entire process of okay, don't listen to the outside noise, just focus on yourself. There's going to be highs and lows, just keep going. I had gone through that in the American League, and so a lot of last year I was experiencing the same things, but at age 31, and I could kind of like almost have a third-party perspective of myself and be like, oh, okay, you're going through this again. Like, you're extremely stressed out, you're thinking about the wrong things, you're worrying about the wrong things, let's dial it back in. So it was almost like being a 21-year-old kid to some degree again. This year I kind of just made a commitment to try and be a little bit more even and I think that's really what it's all about, is trying to separate that hockey and life the best you can. And then, I always say this, but like when hockey's going good, life is going good. But if you don't think about it like that, you kind of can separate them. Usually that yields you better results.
Alex, a couple of weeks ago, you said something in one of your media availabilities that stood out to me. You were asked inevitably about it being a contract year for you, and you had said a lot of the years that I've played in have been contract years for me, so it doesn't really get to you. Just how do you deal with that, knowing that, okay, I'm kind of playing for a job, whether it's here or it's somewhere else, that's what I'm doing right now? How does that mix into your day-to-day?
Yeah, I think that when, for every player that has a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, whatever, bigger numbers, your life is much different. But for every one of those players, there's 200 players that live their life on a day-to-day basis in professional hockey and professional sports. It's like that. So for me, it's just about taking that day-to-day mentality, trying to be the best version of yourself on a daily basis. And that's really the only way that you can go about it. If you start looking at the big picture, that's when things start to go. I'm sure it's like that for your jobs as well. It's foolish to think too far ahead. So yeah, it's good. I shouldn't say I like it. Nobody likes being in a contract here, but I like that pressure, and I think that it brings the best out of you and kind of brings the true version of every player of themselves out. And it's like being in a Game 7. It's your persona gets amplified one way or another.
As we talk right now, you've won 5 of your last 6 starts. How do you feel about your game right now? Do you feel like you're in a zone right now?
Yeah, for sure. Feel good. Feel happy. Feel proud. Again, though, it's like being on a windowsill. You go one way too far, and then it's going to tip back the other way, or you're going to fall off the edge. So that's the trap. And you just can't ride those highs and lows. And so that's what I'm working hard to do right now is, all right, let's find a way to make it as sustainable as possible. Not feel too good about yourself, while also at the same time retaining that confidence. And for me, being in the NHL is still a learning experience. I haven't gotten far enough down the road where I just know exactly what I need to do and the things that I need to focus on to be super successful. So yeah, honestly, right now for me, it's just like, let's just get emotionally invested in this season and not think too far ahead, and just be super competitive every day and be emotionally engaged. And that's the most fun way to play, and also will give you the best chance. Okay,
last one for you. So when I do these, I always cautiously check the Wikipedia pages, because we know that people can put whatever they want on there.
Right.
But at the bottom of yours this time, which I don't think I saw the last time you did this, there was a little thing called the Lyon Eyes.
Yeah, I added that.
You?
I'm just kidding.
You might have. I feel like you might have.
No.
Okay, but is that actually, it said it started in Florida, like your little stare downs of the camera that you do. Did you know that was called Lyon Eyes? Like, has that always been a thing for you?
No, it hasn't. It started in Florida for sure, but honestly, it's just a byproduct of both of you guys have seen me on game days. Like,
yeah,
I have to turn it on a little bit. That's just how I am. I've always been. I have to be in a certain mindset, and like you said, like when I'm in my loose social mode, I can gab a little bit. But when it's time to play, it's time to play for me, and I have to be serious. And actually, that game, well, it's kind of funny. So during that series, I had gotten to know the cameraman, because when you're in the playoffs, there's a cameraman in your locker room all the time filming everything. And so I had gotten to know him really well. And so when I was walking in, I was just trying to mess with him. I didn't know that he was recording me. And so I was like looking directly into the camera, and he was behind the camera smiling and laughing. He's like, haha. And like, I talked to him after. He's like, I didn't know where that would go. I didn't know that would go as far as it did. And so it just kind of happened by accident and as a funny joke. And I still joke around because sometimes the camera here. But honestly, that's just how I am on game days. Like, this is the best way to explain it. This is a lot, but it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 1917, like the Dead War movie. One of the most famous things about that movie is that it's like a one reel, or what do they call it?
It's like a one shot, like one take. They did the whole
One
thing
take.
with the moving camera.
Yeah, right. And it's just like you're living in one take
Yeah.
where it's just constant. Birdman, I think, is like that too. But that's how I think of it on like game day from like 4:30 to 9 o'clock at night. I'm just living in one take. So it's like looking here and then I'm looking here and then I'm looking around here. But there's no gaps in the system because that's how you have to be when you play. You have to be just very present and in the moment. So that's really what I'm trying to achieve is just living in the moment to the maximum ability.
Okay, I lied to you because I have to ask you this. Your last post-game interview you did with me, I think it was New Year's Eve. You were doing the interview, it was great. You burped and you said,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I just burped. And then I followed up with, what are you drinking in there? And you said, Perrier, sparkling water.
Yeah.
Are you always sparkling water out there on the ice? That feels like
No.
a strange thing to drink while playing.
I do like sparkling water because I think it's very refreshing. And as I get older, I try to find like breaks during the game to refresh myself. So I drink quite. I heard last year actually, Jake Wallman told me that Vlad likes to have Perrier. I don't want to divulge too much, but like in and around the games. And so I tried it last year and I really enjoyed it. And now it's cool for me to see him drinking Perrier. It's like a, cool celebrity moment. I'm still starstruck by, having him and Cannon on the same team as me. It's crazy. But it's like, yeah, I'm drinking Perrier too, Vlad. Cool.
We just drink champagne, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ken's up in the booth.
Well, it's something to think about. I'm willing to try some other things out.
Yeah, whatever works, right? Well, Alex, we appreciate your time. Great to chat with you as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry I couldn't ask you guys more questions.
Next time.
Hoping to flip it back around, but next time.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll get you back.
I would love to interview you guys next time.
Oh my God, I have to prepare for that. But okay, I'm in.
All right. Perfect.